Welcome to our podcast, The Words That Make Us.
Consider this time with us as your excuse to take a break from everything.
Every episode, we choose a word that makes us think, wonder, or dream. We read a range of texts that explore different aspects of this word.
And we let our thoughts wander. We hope that yours will too. So grab your favourite tea.
Or a beer.
And join me, Rama
And me, Tony Bailey. Let's go!
So today's episode is about teachers. So, Tony, what was that in your bag that you just put away?
I've got an invite. Have you got one too?
Yeah, I've got one
invite to the graduation on Friday.
Yeah. It's always exciting, isn't it, when we get our invites?
I've got that same sort of feeling in my stomach right now, like when my two children left home.
Yeah,
I get it every year as my next set of students leaves, you know?
Yeah, like an empty nester, kind of like a bit of loss, a bit of grief that it's over. Yeah.
No, delight, joy that they've gone and I'm never going to see them again. What are you talking about? Actually, that's not true. Of course.
Our students are listening. Some of them are listening just for Mr. Bailey's voice. So that is not true, everyone.
Mean it,
he
guys.
Did cry a few tears before. It's like...
of laughter. Yeah. No, it's a mixture, isn't it, of emotions? Because on the one hand... You do kind of, a bit like with family, it's quite nice when your kids move on. Yeah. It's time for the next stage and they're ready for that. Yeah. And maybe you do get a bit sick of the sight of each other. I mean, there were some poor students I had in this last year who I taught both maths and business. So I had them, something like
8 hours,
twice a day. And some people were, every day of the week had to put up with an episode of Mr. Bailey. It must have been terrible.
Or you with them.
Yeah. Yeah. But one thing that's definitely true as a teacher is every student, it does not matter what my history with them is, I will miss them.
Yes.
Because they become like a feature of your
day.
Your life and your day.
Exactly. I mean, I really am going to miss them. And I must say some years are more challenging than others. Some years I find it really difficult to get through the material because they're very challenging or they're not doing the work or, and some years just flow. But regardless, I always feel a sense of grief before, at the time when they're leaving.
Yeah, although another thing that's true as a teacher is that within 6 months I will have forgotten all their names. Do you find that?
No.
I've got this thing in my brain with teaching that I only keep things that are going to be useful.
Yeah. Like a spring clean.
Yeah. So if I don't need to know somebody's name next year, then why? It's amazing. Even students that I had last year, I've seen.
That's hilarious.
And it's like, what was their name again? And that dreadful thing when you're wheeling your shopping cart around the supermarket.
Mr. Bailey.
Hi, Mr. Bailey. You think, who the hell are you? I have no idea. Also, because often, students change so much.
Yeah. That's just an excuse, Mr. Bailey, I swear.
Well, there was one student who stopped me on the street.
Yeah.
Hi, Mr. Bailey. How are you doing? And he was this big bloke. He was really big, thick set with a big beard.
Yeah, that happened to me once. Yeah.
And quite long hair.
Yeah.
And he was talking around. I was thinking, just stick with it. I have no idea who this guy is. And then he started telling me about he was working with my daughter.
Oh, wow.
Because she was working in a shop in where we lived. And I was like, that narrows it down.
Yeah.
But I still don't know who you are. And then he was talking about how he loved it when we used to play football. So I'm like, that's narrowing it down. I still have no idea.
That's hilarious.
And I had to do that terrible, just remind me what your name is again. He said, Chris. I'm thinking, I'm still none the wiser.
Oh, that's hilarious.
He's called Chris.
That's
I
really
must have known him. I must have been very close at the time, but
yeah.
my brain has just rejected that completely.
Actually, it's really funny. As soon as I see someone, the name springs to my mind right away. It's really funny. But also, like I have smaller classes.
You are a much more sociable, nicer person than I am. I think you probably, take more care about
I don't know
niceties
about
like what people are called. For me, they're just numbers. Just another
Just
one.
another brick in the wall.
Yeah. Do you know how many, on average, students a teacher influences during their teaching career?
I don't know, a few thousand?
3,000.
Wow.
On average, the average teacher during their career will have taught and influenced around 3,000
What a privilege.
students. Yeah.
What a privilege. I mean, this is such a
What
blessing.
a huge amount, I'm thinking.
It's a great...
Yeah. Yes.
Yeah, I think, the thing is just like, what did we leave these kids with? I think that's the question.
Yeah.
It's like, you influence them in what way?
Well, I like the quote that I found that said, teachers are the only people who lose sleep over other people's kids.
Oh, yeah.
And that's so true, isn't it?
Oh, I like that.
Think about how many of those 3,000 kids during your career you honestly will have lost sleep over.
Yeah,
and actually, it's quite a lot.
It's quite a lot. Some people I'm thinking about while I'm driving, I'm worrying about them. Oh my God, I should write an email to see if they're okay. And that's so true.
Yeah. So, this is going to be a very exciting episode to mark the fact that it's, our grade 12s are leaving and it's graduation. We thought we'd talk about teachers today. So this could go in so many different directions.
I was worried about this one because I didn't want to toot our own horn, but at the same time...
I never toot my own horn, not in public. No. You're quite right. Especially as a teacher.
That was a stinky joke.
Especially as a teacher. Should never do that. I think it's a good opportunity for us just to let's reflect on our life as teachers.
Yeah,
really.
I think, there is some kind of nobility in it that we have to address. At the same time, there are so many sarcastic ways to look at teachers. I mean, we have so many follies, just like all people. And
for all of the, we could go into a deep discussion now about how undervalued teachers are, how teacher well-being is not right, it's not, it's not good.
How many teachers go through
politicization of
breakdowns
and there's an awful lot of material out there, and maybe we will get onto that.
Yeah.
But put all that to one side, and actually teaching as a profession, there is so much joy.
Yeah.
And I love this job. And I laugh more than I ever did in any other work that I ever did because of the situation.
You can laugh at these kids.
They're there all the time making and colleagues as well.
Oh yeah,
there's plenty of opportunity.
Yeah, there's that lady that sits across from you. I think she's quite.
She's hilarious.
A laughing stock.
She's hilarious. So let's go back to your childhood then. I've got two questions. One is, I could just imagine you being that little girl in the playground who automatically was a teacher to the others. Yeah. So have you always been really a teacher?
I remember the time, actually, because when I was at home and we used to play games, me and my siblings, because I was at that stage, I was the eldest of 5 before the other 2 arrived. So that was the original 5.
Yeah.
I was always either the mother or the teacher. I still remember we had, in our garden, we had a black door that served as my blackboard.
Of course.
And I was teaching them and stuff.
None of this Jamboard nonsense back in those days.
God, no. It was just regular chalk. Good old chalk.
Good.
No, but the funny thing was that when I was in uni and I was studying English literature and a friend of mine was like, oh, you would make a fine teacher. I was like, why would you say that? I don't want to be a teacher. That's not what I want to do.
Yeah.
Lo and behold, teaching has been the only job I've ever done in my life, either tutoring or teaching. And that's it. I've not done anything else.
I think you can spot the teachers. I mean, my little girl, I can see her and think, I could
she
imagine
would make
you
a teacher.
being a teacher. You've got that attitude that goes with it.
Which attitude is that? The know-it-all or the bossiness?
But the need to guide other people.
Oh, yeah.
So she's got a couple of little friends, and she'll come back and comment how they're not very good at maths, and she's having to help them. And I got into trouble when I was at school because we did a little assessment test. I must have been age 5 or 6. We did a little assessment test, and I finished before everybody else. So the teacher, I think, had nipped out for a smoke. It was back in the, it was in the late 60s, early 70s. They were in the classroom. So I got out of my chair and I went round to other people's desks to help them finish off their tests. And the teacher came in and was really annoyed with me. And I didn't see that I'd done anything wrong. I was just trying to
skewed all the results, Tony.
I didn't know about results. I didn't realise. But yeah. So the second question I had for you was then, so you naturally had teacher-like qualities when you were small.
I think so.
Yeah. And were you influenced by any particular teachers that stand out in your memory?
So there are a few teachers that stand out in my memory, but there's this one particular teacher. She taught me in grade 3. I will never forget her. And
never forgive her. Oh, dear.
I'll never forget her. Last year I was teaching the students letter writing in grade 6.
Yeah.
And I said to them, find a teacher around the school that you want to, from your past years that you want to send a thank you letter to. This was the end of the year. Huh?
I didn't get any.
They were in grade 6. Oh. So you hadn't touched their lives yet.
Thank God. Yeah, good.
No, but, and I wrote one as a model to my teacher in grade 3. I almost cried writing it and reading it, and actually the kids stood up and clapped after I read it because...
So what did you say in your letter?
I can't remember exactly, but it was just this teacher believed in me so much that she would actually call me when she was lesson prepping, She would call me and say, Rama, what's the synonym to this word and what's an antonym, because I read so much as a child, and then she really found me as a useful kind of, there was no internet back then, so another not really, but another opinion would helped, and I felt so grand and so important, and then she would ask me to help people write things, and I felt so good about myself, and I don't think I ever felt that way about during school ever.
So the essence was the fact that she believed in you.
Oh my God, yeah. I mean, I don't remember any content that she taught me. This was so long ago, but I do remember this, she maybe just showed me that I was worthy, and that's so important. How about you?
Quote from Sidney Hook.
Yeah.
Just because it sprung what you said.
Yeah.
Everyone who remembers their own education remembers teachers, not methods and techniques. The teacher is the heart of the educational system.
Absolutely.
So I don't remember. I have sort of 2 teachers from my past that I remember, and they were chalk and cheese. And I have no idea what they taught me. I don't remember how they taught me maths or taught me to sing or whatever.
Yeah.
I just remember them as personalities.
Yeah.
And they were so markedly different. So my first teacher was this lovely, lovely lady. She was very young.
Mine was very young too. Maybe that's a thing as well. That's before they become what's the word? Callous,
bitter, twisted, worn down by the profession. So, no, Miss Tudor, she must have only been 20,
in her 20s,
21.
yeah.
I've got a photograph on my wall, actually, of the class photograph.
No, with her?
With her.
Aww.
And she looked so young. She looked, younger than my daughters. So she was so nice. And I think it's because my experience at home was quite hard. My parents were quite hard on me, demanding. But so it's strange to be going to school to have a bit of a release and to actually have an adult who's giving you a bit of leeway and believe. Again, she believed in me.
Yeah.
She believed in me and gave me lots and lots of encouragement and love. And that was back in the day when your teacher could give you a cuddle. And I used to love it. I could get a cuddle with Mrs. Tudor. She was a good-looking lady.
Yeah, that too. Wow, that's an added bonus.
Yeah, I was only young. And then a few years later, towards the end of primary school, so just before I went on to senior school, I had a teacher called Mrs. Sutton, who, and I think the phrase that we used to use was battle axe.
Oh.
She was a battle axe. She was hard as nails.
Oh, goodness.
She was so demanding on me.
Yeah.
She didn't use any physical violence because she didn't need to.
Yeah.
She was just really
scary
as hell.
Okay.
But I absolutely loved her.
Really?
Yeah.
Huh. You love a firm hand, huh? I don't. I can't.
Absolutely.
I can't. No, people like that scare me. I don't like them one bit.
I mean, she wasn't a warm, cuddly person, but I knew that she cared about me.
Yeah.
And I knew that she believed in me too. And she set really high
standards
and expectations. And as a result, I got a scholarship for one of the best schools in the country.
Oh, wow.
And it was entirely down to her telling me that I had to work hard and work at it, and if I did, that's
You would
what
get
I would
it.
get it.
Yeah.
So I have a lot to thank her for.
Oh, that's lovely.
Most of my teachers were sadists or masochists. I'm a little bit older than you,
Yeah.
and I can't mention the school because I might get sued. But every teacher had their own weapon.
What?
Because the capital punishment was
Yeah.
still okay.
Yeah.
So, it was a regular thing that students would be caned or hit or whipped or belted or whatever.
I had those days too.
I mean, I'm so pleased that
That's over.
I mean, obviously, that's the reason why I went into teaching, and I was a bit disappointed when they got
As
rid
soon
of
as
it,
you
but-
entered the profession, they banned it.
Yeah. I remember once Latin.
Yeah.
A horrible Latin teacher whose name I can't possibly, he might still be alive. And he was so sarcastic. We talked about this the other day, but it was really horrible.
This biting sarcasm, not good
And
sarcasm.
he insulted me quite badly, and I said something back to him. I answered back, which was wrong, but I think I only answered back something like, that's a bit unfair.
Yeah.
So I had to stand the rest of the lesson in the corner of the classroom with the bin on my head. Yeah. So this is one of my standard techniques with my students is to do that. Yeah. So I'm glad that that's disappeared from the classroom. And I'm glad it amuses you so much. Yeah.
Okay, good. So, oh my goodness, do you have any poetry? Oh, I think I have one.
You did the same as last podcast.
I know. I'm
we
sorry.
both ended up with the same poem.
Finding
to
the
start
same
with.
poem. Yeah.
Teachers was a great place to find witty poetry, wasn't it?
Yes.
There wasn't.
This was very good.
There was no romantic William Blake poetry about teachers.
No. I mean,
But
no, there were
funny
some nice
stuff.
things about teachers, but I mean, this was a topic that really lent itself to poetry.
Yeah, absolutely.
So I found this one by Roald Dahl.
I love
and
it, yeah.
It says, "My teacher wasn't half as nice as yours seems to be. My teacher wasn't half as nice as yours seems to be. His name was Mr. Unsworth, and he taught us history. And when you didn't know a date, he'd get you by the ear and start to twist while you sat there quite paralyzed with fear. He'd twist and twist and twist your ear and twist it more and more, until at last the ear came off and landed on the floor. Our class was full of one-eared boys. I'm certain there were 8 who'd had them twisted off because they didn't know a date. So let us now praise teachers who today are all so fine, and yours in particular is totally divine."
Oh, yeah.
One-eared boys.
I'd forgotten that, but that was a regular occurrence. That, okay, Bailey, you're coming with me.
Oh,
Grab me by the ear and stomp me down the corridor.
really?
Yeah, it was a regular thing.
Oh, Bailey.
I was a very good boy.
You know you weren't.
I was a very good boy. I was a prefect when I was in the sixth form, but then everybody.
But then
was.
it went downhill from there.
Yeah. Okay. Shall I retaliate with another poem?
Yes.
I like this poem. This is called Napoleon.
Oh, I found the same one. That's
Aha!
not fair. That is not good.
Did you find this? I loved it because it's about the innocence.
It's by a Czech poet.
Yeah,
Miroslav HOLUB.
Yeah, good.
No.
That's good.
This is retaliation indeed.
It is.
Okay, go on.
I like it because it's all about the innocence of children. Children, when was Napoleon Bonaparte born? Asks teacher. 1,000 years ago, the children say. 100 years ago, the children say. Last year, the children say. No one knows. Children, what did Napoleon Bonaparte do? Asks teacher. Won a war, the children say. Lost a war, the children say. No one knows. Our butcher had a dog called Napoleon, says František. The butcher used to beat him and the dog died of hunger a year ago. And all the children are now sorry for Napoleon. Oh, that's so good.
I love it, not because it's about the innocence of children. It's about how sometimes useless some lessons are.
Yeah.
You know, like you stand there and you think you have imparted some great knowledge on these kids, and then all you get back from them is nothing. You get that,
or nonsense, or it goes off on one
in one tangent.
In
exactly.
a tangent, and you think, how do we get there?
Exactly.
And I think I'm quite lucky that at the moment I'm teaching grade 11 and 12.
Yeah.
So for the most part, they're relatively normal and
good.
relatively adult. But there's something in that poem about that age group. I can imagine them being sort of grade 3 or 4
absolutely.
or whatever. Like, it's like juggling frogs. I'm not sure that I could do it anymore.
I loved it when I did it back in the day, but I always went home wondering, did I teach them anything today? Because first of all, it was so much fun. And second, it was like, you're trying to tell them something and then they go, but Mshar, my uncle did that too. And then my uncle, and then they talk about Spain, and then they talk about, boats, and you're like, what the hell? How did we get here?
Yeah.
And so, at least now you can control it in a way.
Well, we can try. But do you know what? That was a fantastic segue into Stoicism. Stoicism on teaching. Because you said that, even your best preparation, you go in there and you think, I've got a fantastic lesson here. And then it goes off and you end up talking about a cat called Napoleon and and whatever. So I looked at Stoicism on teaching. And so the Stoic notion is it's all about control, right? And the idea is essentially in life there are 3 types of event as a Stoic. There are events that are completely under your control, events which you have some but not complete control, and others which it doesn't matter what you do, you have no control. And when you map that onto the life of a teacher, and there's actually a book written called The Stoic Teacher, which I was looking at some quotes for. It's really true, isn't it? Have you heard the Serenity Prayer?
No.
God, grant me the serenity to accept the things I cannot change, the courage to change the things I can, and the wisdom to know the difference. And in a way, Stoicism is basically saying, as a teacher, you must do the things you can control. So I'd like to think that I plan my lessons really well. I know where I'm up to. I've got a strategy for assessment. I know what I'm supposed to be doing. When I go into the classroom, for the most part, I can control that because I've got behaviour management, I've got routines so that's fine. But there may be one student who comes in the morning who's having a terrible, terrible time at home, or is just not motivated at all because their mind's on other things. And I just have to accept as a teacher, there are some things I can't control. Yeah.
Or like the fire alarm goes off, or,
or
somebody faints in your class, like what happened to me.
Yeah.
So,
So I think, and that's quite a good way of looking at it, is don't beat yourself up when things don't always go exactly to plan, because there are so many other variables that are affecting the effectiveness of you as a teacher. So you said when unforeseen things happen in your classroom, you must have some funny event that's happened to you in the classroom that you need to share with me. Anything? What's the funniest thing that's happened when you've been a teacher?
I'm sure so many funny things have happened that I can't really think of. But there was this one time I was teaching 1984, and the scene with the rats was going to come up. This was not funny. This was traumatic as hell. Yeah. And I had a group of 17-year-olds, and I was hyping them up for the scene so they would pay attention. They were also engaged. And I said to them, look, guys, my only fear in life is rats. And the scene is going to come up, and I need you all to be there with me, because I'm going to read it, and you have to be, and while I'm reading this thing, and I'm really my stomach is doing somersaults, and all of a sudden I hear one of the students, Mishar, so-and-so fainted. And I'm like, what? So I look and the guy is under the desk. And
because of the
I
the
thought
rat.
so. I thought so, but it turned out that it just happened. Maybe it was me. Maybe it was my fantastic, dramatic reading.
Yeah. No, I think you hyped it up so it was so...
Oh my God.
Yeah.
I never thought it was my fault. Anyway, it happened, and then I threw the book aside and I went outside and who can do first aid? Who can do... Oh my God, it was terrible. And then the ambulance came. I'll never forget that story.
I've got two really good ones.
Tell me.
I was thinking about it last night, what could I tell you about? So when I was doing my first year of teaching, it was in quite a rough school. It was great fun, but some of the kids were amazing. But I taught this maths class, and there was this girl whose name, we'll just call her Julie,
Yeah.
right? She wasn't called Julie, but she had a glass eye.
I think I remember that story.
Yeah, glass eye, which unfortunately her little kid brother had shot it with an air pistol and she lost her eye.
Oh God.
But I remember being in class and I'm teaching away at the board and there's this noise, Mr. Bailey. Yes, what is it, Julie? My eye's fallen out. And there's this...
Like marble.
like it as it bounces around. So honestly, I had to stop the class so we could all have a look around to see if we could see her eye on the floor. and then pick it up, and then she wiped it on a school jumper to clean it,
and that's it.
Put it in her mouth to clean it round, and then stuck it back in again. And then we got back to question 3.
Oh my God.
And my second funny event was, you won't believe this, but I did on one occasion teach drama for a term.
I can totally believe that.
I loved it. Anyway, we did improvisation. And in the improvisation, the person who was improvising had to improvise having been shot. Okay. They're in different situations and, and somebody would do that. Anyway, this boy, he was sitting on a chair and so somebody shoots him and he goes, dramatic, and throws himself off the chair. And he's writhing around the floor going, and the whole class is going, wow, that's amazing.
Amazing acting.
Well done, fantastic. And he'd broken his leg. So how do you explain that to the head? In my drama class, somebody broke the leg while improvising.
You taught them too well. This is just a testament to how amazing of an art teacher you were.
But the thing is, and how many other jobs would we have these experiences to fall back on?
I mean, I think this
my first career.
Yeah, nothing happened.
Nothing funny happened.
Exactly.
A lot of terrible things happened.
Yeah, I can imagine.
But
this reminds me of a poem that I found today. And I actually thought about reading it, not reading it. It's not very appropriate. It's quite rough, actually, but it does talk about this idea of the lesson not going quite the way you want it to go.
Okay.
And so this teacher is quite frustrated with this.
Okay.
And this is a poem by Roger McGough, which
we love Roger
read.
McGough.
Exactly.
Do you remember?
Yeah, we read 2 of his poems.
Yeah.
So
I do not want to age gracefully or something.
Exactly,
like that,
exactly. Something about aging when he was like he wanted to go down with what prostitutes and things like that.
Yeah, and then he just changed his mind when he got old. Yeah,
exactly. So this one is called The Lesson poem.
Yeah.
The Lesson, by Roger McGough. So, chaos ruled okay in the classroom. As bravely the teacher walked in, the Nooligans ignored him. His voice was lost in the din. The theme for today is violence, and homework will be set. I'm going to teach you a lesson on that you'll never forget. He picked on a boy who was shouting and throttled him then and there, then garroted the girl behind him, the one with grotty hair. Sword in hand, he hacked his way between the chattering rows. First come, first severed, he declared, fingers, feet, or toes. He threw the sword at a latecomer. It struck with deadly aim. Then, pulling out a shotgun, he continued with his game. The first blast cleared the back row, where those whose skive hang out. They collapsed like rubber dinghies when the plugs pulled out. Please, may I leave the room, sir? A trembling vandal inquired. Of course you may, said teacher. Put the gun to his temple and fired. The head popped a head around the door to see why a din was being made. Nodded understandingly, then tossed in a grenade. And when the ammo was well spent, with blood on every chair, Silence shuffled forward with his hands up in the air. The teacher surveyed the carnage, the dying and the dead. He waggled a finger severely. Now, let that be a lesson, he said.
I like it. Yes. Makes me think about our lockdown procedures and whatever, but yeah. Do you know, I think every teacher at some stage in their life
at least fantasized about this.
Has lost it with a class. It doesn't happen very often, and as I've got older, I'm much more mellow. It's like whatever sort of thing. But there are sometimes just one-off lessons where, it's
sometimes
a nightmare.
I mean, to be honest, and this is like not funny because it was quite bad back then. I am usually very, very patient, and I can take a lot. And I do have good classroom management, I think. But there was this one time where they really got on my nerves and I stepped out to cry a little bit. I was like, I can't take this anymore. I went out, cried, came back, gave them a dressing down. They were shocked like you wouldn't believe. They were so upset. Yeah. And it was so much better after that. The next day I got tea and a book and like from different students to apologize. But yeah, I had to lose it on them once for them to behave. But this was one time. It doesn't
do any harm when it's authentic and, using that word, authentic, and when it's human. Yeah. I mean, I never shout at students. I never lose it. Or rather, should I say, on the very, very, very rare occasions when I do, the teacher the students know that I mean it. Yeah. Whereas there are some, teachers from my past who you could just hear them every lesson bawling out the class. And I can imagine being a student in that class thinking, oh gosh, off he goes again.
Exactly, and it means nothing anymore.
Has no impact at all. Yeah. You're always angry at us, sir. Yeah, exactly. So why should today be any different? Yeah. So I think you're quite right. Save it for when it really counts and such like. What do you think it's like in your classroom to be a student?
You know what they say in German? They say Selbstlob stinkt. It means like when you what's the word? Self-praise stinks. So I don't want to praise myself. So
what do you hope?
I hope that it's very fun and very engaging. Yeah. That's what I aim for it to be. Because I feel like I would like them. First of all, I don't see myself as a teacher. I see myself as a facilitator. I really want to see myself as somebody who shows them ways and places to look and learn. So I do rely on presentations because not all the time, but for every unit there is at least one or two presentations, because I feel like that's how they teach themselves and teach others, and that's how it works. And I would like to learn from them too, so it's like it's a win-win situation for everyone. So I feel like I'm showing them how, I'm showing them where, and I love that when these students make their presentations, they look very much like my presentations, and I love that. Yeah. So I think I'm a facilitator.
Yeah, I think the word teacher is very old-fashioned now. Yeah. Because I think the idea of teaching is kind of one-directional.
Yeah, exactly.
Teaching
it's like you're an empty vessel and I'm a full bottle, and let me just impart my knowledge into you. I don't think that's how it works.
No, you can't teach unless there's somebody wanting to learn. Yeah. So my role is teacher, and the role of the student is learner, but in the setup that we are, I just like to think of them as that I'm their adult friend. Yeah, really. Exactly. Who's been given the job of imparting knowledge to them, and their job is to use me to get as much knowledge as they can. Mm-hmm. And if you can create an atmosphere where that's how people feel, it breaks down the barriers.
Absolutely.
I also think it's really important as a teacher to live by the same standards that you expect of your students. Yeah. So I never ask things of my students that I'm not modelling myself. Mm. So, like I say, I can never understand teachers who turn up and they rush into the classroom because they haven't prepared anything, and and they I forgot that we had. It's such a bad example when you're expecting your students to organise their time and their life, and yet you can't do it yourself. Yeah. Yeah. I had a colleague in the previous school, and he was so badly organised because his mind wasn't really on the job. He was too busy doing stuff outside of school. And I remember him, I was an assistant principal at the time, and I remember a student coming to me and saying, Sir, can I just speak about Mr. X's class today? Yeah, what about it? Well, he taught us exactly the same lesson that he did the day before. But he didn't realise.
I didn't remember.
He did volcanoes again, and we did that the day before. How can you expect your students to...
Can I tell you something? We had a few teachers over the years where they did not care one bit about the knowledge part of it.
Yeah.
It was just about building relationships, basically, being just friends with these kids. And that's the other extreme of it, you know, where it's like not about the knowledge at all. It's just about us being buddies. And I feel like that's also interesting, because if you ask these students 10, 20 years from now, who was your favorite teacher, they might very well say that was their favorite teacher because all they did was goof around and do nothing. And I find that quite unfair, you know, because there are some other teachers who really did a lot of work.
I think that also depends on the student as well.
Yeah.
Because I think a lot of students value the teachers who got them where they need to get to.
Yeah.
So, you know, if you goofed around and didn't progress and didn't do very well in the exam because your teacher was nice to you.
I think this only happens when they're older, though.
Yeah.
But when they're younger, they don't realise that. They just are very happy that, you know, the time was wasted. And yeah. And so that's interesting. I looked at some websites at where teachers get the most respect in which countries. And
well, maybe we should start with a blanket statement.
Yeah.
That is that in general, compared to other professions, teaching is very, very much second division in terms of monetary rewards.
Oh, yeah.
In terms of status, etc. And actually, I remember when it wasn't a teacher, what my attitude towards teaching was.
What was it?
I feel a little bit ashamed, really.
Tell me.
Well, you know the phrase, those who can do, those who can't teach.
Teach, yes.
I honestly...
You felt that way?
I felt that way.
Aww.
I sort of felt like... Because I went off to world of management consulting, investment banking, like a proper job.
Yeah, a proper job, not like you lot.
Proper job where there was real pressure and like adults.
Playing with money.
Yeah. And then either some of the girls and the soft boys who didn't really have a clue what they wanted, they went to become teachers because they didn't have any other ideas what to do. And I honestly saw it like that. And I thought, and they get these really long holidays.
Yeah, that's the other thing. People always envy us that.
Really long holidays, and they go home at 4. Or before that, even.
And they don't do anything at home. They don't take their laptops.
And they're not even teaching the whole day. I mean, so it is a DOS. It's an easy job.
Yeah.
And I really did believe that until I started teaching, and you thought, oh my God.
What made you go into teaching, actually? Why did you leave your banking job?
Because I'd had enough of being... I mean, it was a tough job, and it was a tough environment, and I was away from home a lot, and under a lot of pressure, surrounded by a lot of people I didn't particularly like. And I'd already made enough money that the lure of the big box wasn't
there anymore.
Attractive. And it was more a case of, okay, I'm mid-career, now's the opportunity to do something you really want to do.
I like that so much. I respect that so much.
So I think I told you before, like financially, when I was training to teach, I did a teacher training in the UK where for mature entrants, classifying myself as mature in years, so I went straight into the classroom, and you did your teacher training on the job sort of thing.
Yeah.
And you got paid. And my first month's salary as a teacher, as a trainee teacher,
was about 10%, 20%?
Was the same as my daily rate.
No.
When I was working in consulting. So it was like, I got my paycheck, it was like, what the hell?
Did you not know that before you went into it?
I knew it was going to be bad.
Not that bad.
I just didn't kind of compute just how poor the salaries were. But you realise that nobody goes into teaching to make money.
No.
So
and a lot of the teachers spend their money on supplies. I mean, if you think we are lucky here that we get our supplies given to us, we don't have to buy a thing.
Yeah.
But in America, for example, these big like Staples and these big stationery shops, all the teachers are spending their hard-earned money on these things.
Yeah, I read that the average American teacher spends $500.
That's ridiculous, given that they are not that well paid, especially in some poor areas. Do you know? This is something I watched once John Oliver do an episode on, and I loved that episode because it was so shocking and so eye-opening. In America, the funding for schools, do you know where it comes from? I mean, some of it comes from federal money.
Yeah.
But I think most of it comes from, can you guess?
No.
Property tax.
Really?
Property tax. So if the school is in a posh area, they have a lot of money from that property.
Yeah.
And so they get good teachers, experienced teachers, and they're paid more. And those schools in rough arees, because the houses are not as expensive, the tax is lower, they get less funding. And it's
a self-perpetuating model.
Incredible. I mean, how you need to pump a little bit more money into the poor areas and not the other way around. It's crazy. So
there's a great quote. Teaching is the only profession where you steal things from home and bring them to work.
So true.
It's true, isn't it?
So true.
It's true.
Again, not for us because we are lucky here, really.
Yeah, we are very lucky.
But in other places, yes. I know teachers back in Syria who used to make things at home and take them to school because school provided nothing.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, well, let's talk about then. So I think there's a couple of things. One is about where in the world are teachers revered, and then maybe to talk a little bit about why. Because I've got some theories about that too.
So from what I found on this website, it's the global teacher status. It said that actually teachers are revered. The 3 top countries where teachers are revered are China, Malaysia, Taiwan.
Yes.
I wonder why they're all Asian countries. Like, is that the culture thing? That
I think
teachers are seen as senseis? Basically?
Yeah, absolutely. I think that in the same way as they have respect for the elders and parents, I think teachers are seen in a similar light.
Yeah, and it's funny because they said in Taiwan, teachers are seen just as important as doctors.
Yeah.
You know how doctors, that's the job that everybody wants around the world. And in Taiwan, they're just as important. And it's really, really cool.
Yeah, it's interesting.
The 3 bottom countries were Italy, Israel, and Brazil.
Yeah, the Brazil statistic is just incredible, isn't it? Has it got a rating of like 1 or 2% or something out of...
Something really bad.
Yeah, so this teacher status index rates teachers' value to society on a score of 0 to 100. Mm-hmm. So if you're getting a score of 100, as they are in China, then you are like gold.
Yeah, top of the society.
The society values you immensely, like a doctor, like a priest, like a figurehead of society. But what is going on in Brazil?
I read about it. They said
that they've only got a status index of 1.8, is it, or something?
Yeah, something really low.
Why are teachers so
poorly
treated, I wonder, or perceived, actually?
Yeah. They said that some of them didn't even go to university. So only in 1996 did this become a requirement that they have to go to university to get a degree. But I think also, like, I don't know, maybe there's violence against them. They're just not well... regarded.
It just strikes me as if people in Brazil feel teachers have so little value,
then why would you go into that profession?
Why would you become a teacher?
Yeah, so it's a vocation. It's really a calling.
It's self-perpetuating, isn't it? You wouldn't go into teaching if everybody feels so badly about that. But also, why is the Brazilian population not doing something about it then?
So they are. The government is now really working hard on it, making sure that they are giving them enough funding and enough education and training and everything to raise their status a little bit. So that's the good thing.
Interesting to see that Germany
is in the middle, isn't it? Or towards the top?
It's in the bottom half.
Oh.
It's about 30... teacher status index of 35, which is not great.
No, but I must admit that, I mean, in Syria, teachers are seen as They are respected, but they're really poorly paid. But they are respected.
Yeah.
But when I came to Germany, I realized that being a teacher is something that will earn you respect. When you say to someone, I'm a teacher, oh, eine Lehrerin, you know, it's a really good thing. I feel really good about saying I'm a teacher in Germany.
Yeah.
But maybe they're talking, but also I think they're very well paid. I mean, not in our school, not private schools, but like...
in the
German public system.
So, yeah, let's have a look. So in European teacher salaries, so teachers in France and Italy earn half the amount that teachers do in Germany, for example.
Yeah.
So the other thing in the German state system, teachers are part of the civil service, so they get
benefits,
a lot of security,
yeah,
and they also get the great pension that goes with it.
Private health insurance.
Highest paid teachers in Europe are in Luxembourg, then Switzerland, and then Germany.
Really?
Yeah.
Oh, wow.
France, Italy earn less than half of what a teacher would earn in Germany.
Wow.
I mean, that's incredible. A country like France should be like that.
Yeah.
So the teachers are so undervalued.
That's really shocking. And I expected actually Scandinavian countries to be the most accommodating of teachers.
They're up there. Denmark, so Luxembourg, Switzerland, Germany, then it's Denmark, Iceland, Norway.
Ah, okay.
Sweden's quite high up there too. How about the annual starting salary for a teacher in Albania?
I don't know. I don't want to know. Is it like 10,000?
4,233.
Oh dear.
Isn't that terrible?
Yeah.
So why do you think? And then you can put that starting salary we talked about. Just to reiterate what you said about Germany, if you translate that into purchasing power, so because the other one was just in raw euros, but in purchasing power, Germany has. In terms of a purchasing power standard measure, Germany is the best in Europe.
Okay. See, I thought so.
Better than Luxembourg and Switzerland because the cost of living in Luxembourg and Switzerland is so much higher than it is here.
Yeah.
So, but this is German state system.
Exactly.
Albania is still bottom, 7,824. How much higher than the minimum wage does a teacher get paid? So, for example, in Germany, a German teacher gets paid 2.8 times more than the minimum wage.
Not that much.
Whereas somewhere like France, 1.4. It's almost the minimum wage.
Yeah.
And in Poland, 1.1.
Oh dear.
So, and yet you have to have a qualification, often even a master's degree, to actually be a teacher.
But it's interesting because I read some studies while preparing for this showing a clear correlation between pay and quality of the teachers. So, you say if you pay peanuts, you get monkeys.
Yeah,
and
absolutely.
you shouldn't. You should invest in this because education is actually one of the most important. What's the word? Foundations of society. Yeah. I looked at some...
Just finish off on that article. This is from Euronews. It's got a lot of interesting statistics about teaching in Europe. Which country pays or spends the most on education as a percentage of its GDP, do you think?
In the world?
In Europe.
Oh, in Europe.
Because I think it's not can't really compare Germany with the United States because the model, as you said, is so strange.
Yeah.
And actually, the teaching profession in the United States, very similar average salary to in Germany.
Yeah.
But the cost and having to pay for healthcare and everything else, it's really, really tough.
So the question again.
Which country is spending the most on education as a percentage of their GDP, do you think? And who's spending the least?
I think it's a Scandinavian country. Is it Finland?
No, Finland are up there. You're right. Scandinavian countries occupy most of the top position. So Iceland spends 7.7%
Wow.
of its GDP on education.
Yeah.
Sweden 7%. Estonia, Belgium, Denmark, Norway, Finland, all spending around 6% or just over 6%. Despite the really poor salaries, France spends 5.5% of its GDP. And then you have to go down the table close to the bottom to Germany.
Really?
Germany's only spending 4.7% of its GDP on education. And at the bottom of the pile in Europe is Ireland.
Ireland?
3%.
Oh.
Yeah, just a bit of a surprise.
Oh, yeah?
Yeah. Yeah. So do you have any theories then why are teachers paid so poorly, do you think?
No, but it reminds me a little bit of why nurses are also paid poorly.
Yes.
You know, it's very similar. It's like those people who go in it for the love of service and for the love of helping people, I think get maybe taken advantage of.
Yes.
That's my theory.
Yeah. Yes. So there are a number of kind of three core reasons. Firstly, teaching is 70% women.
They don't know how to stand up for themselves.
Yeah. Because it's perceived as a female job, it suffers the pay inequalities of gender inequality.
Yeah.
You know?
Interesting.
So that's true, which is also true of the nursing profession,
yes,
right?
Exactly. How sad is this?
It's terrible. The second thing is that although people will shout about the quality of education, both politically and in terms of, the general population, will say education is really important, but they'll happily spend money on war, and
absolutely
other
arms,
other public expenditure, but putting their hands in their pockets to spend money on a decent education system.
And then they're like, we don't have enough money.
It's a cost, and austerity and cost cutting, so it always gets hit in that respect.
Yes.
And then the third really interesting factor that I read about was just the way that the teaching profession grew. So if you take something like the medical profession, notice we call it the medical profession, and when they created this body called the medical or doctors, they created their own professional body. The British Medical Council or something like that, which kind of controlled the medical profession. It wasn't controlled by the government. So the British Medical
They have their
Council
own rules.
Were able to act as a negotiating body and to create a high status in the same way as the legal profession has its own governing body and can negotiate and make the status high. They have no problems getting pay rises and charging big fees. Whereas the teaching profession, rather like the nurses, are seen as a workers' group and they have a union. Yeah. They don't have a professional body who is upholding professional standards on behalf of the profession, but in return is expecting decent rewards.
Wow.
So, the cards are very much stacked against the profession.
I don't get it. I mean, these are the people you're entrusting with your children, really. I mean, the same thing. I mean, and children are the future, literally. Like, I don't know how. Same thing with, in Germany, there's this crisis about caregivers at kindergartens and stuff. Like, these are the people who are taking care of our little babies and children. Like, they should be well compensated, and they're not.
I thought it was quite funny during COVID how there was a sudden realisation amongst parents
how important
teachers suddenly were. Yes. Like, oh my God, I've got to be at home and educate my child.
Exactly.
I'm very worried about public sector jobs in general, but teaching is a clear example that when the average pay rise for teachers has just crawled up. Meanwhile, inflation has gone up by 27% in the last 2 years. And you've got teachers overwhelmingly, 6 out of 7 teachers in a survey by National Education Union, this is in the UK, believed that their pay was not fair, given their skills and qualifications. 85% disagreed. So members, more than half, nearly 60% of teachers now are very or extremely worried about being able to keep up with their household bills and finances.
Yeah, and it's funny because in a lot of countries, I think in America, they said that 1 of 3 teachers will be doing another job, a second job.
Yeah.
And in Syria, I remember the teachers the male teachers always had a second job, taxi driver, I don't know, working at a shop or something. And that should not be the case. A teacher should be well rested and has enough time to be creative and come up with good lessons and stuff, and not go to work the next day sleep deprived from working another job.
But how do you think it's funny because I think a lot of the population would stand behind you and say, yes, that's true.
But then they wouldn't know where the money should come from.
But if suddenly teachers' salaries were increased by 25% or 50%, we'll put on a par with, the medical profession or the legal profession or whatever.
There would be an uprising.
There would be an uprising, wouldn't there?
Yeah, there would be. Because, they already think that we have way too many holidays and that we are so spoiled.
I think we are spoiled. I'm happy to take slightly less salary on the basis that I do get longer holidays. But I do need the holiday. Yeah. Because you do get to the end of a term and you're
completely exhausted. Yeah.
Because the other thing is about teaching, it is very unforgiving. You can't take a couple of hours off and just have a breather.
Imagine if you just went into class and just put your head down and, I don't know, cried about a problem or took a little nap or something. You cannot.
I do that most days. Get on with your work, guys. I've got some sleeping to do. I remember.
But like other jobs, you can just say, oh, today is going to be a slow day. I'm going to be slower and tomorrow I'll catch up on my work. You can do that. But when you're a teacher, you have to be 100% on.
I remember working in the city. There's a football game on in the afternoon, so we'll just go down to the
taking the rest of the day off.
and go and watch that. And the next day, not feeling too good in the morning, so I'll just find a little corner to drink coffee and pretend that I'm working. And you had so much more. Yes, it was a hard job. Yeah, there was stress and pressure, but there was a little bit of leeway for your own well-being. Whereas teaching, the kids are always coming. They keep coming.
Exactly.
There's a timetable. You've got to be there. You can't.
No.
You can't be in control of that.
Yeah. No. Exactly.
Teachers in England are abandoning their profession in record numbers.
Yes, I read that.
Almost 9% of the workforce left schools last year. That's massive. 10% of teachers left their jobs.
Yeah, that's a lot.
And that doesn't include those a further 4,000 teachers retired, leaving more than 2,300 empty posts compared with only 500 a decade earlier. 3,300 posts were being filled by supply teachers, not permanent ones, which is 1,000 more than a year before. Also associated with that, a large number of teachers missing because of illness, with more than 3 million working days of sick leave taken last year.
Oh, yeah, because that's too much pressure.
A rise of more than 50% compared with pre-pandemic levels. Something's got to give, don't you think?
Yes.
I also read that the average tenure of a teacher in the UK, 4 years in the profession. And of the people who go into teacher training and start a job,
they don't stay that long.
A huge proportion are leaving within the first 2 years.
Yeah.
For my subject, maths, the group of people age group, most recruits into the maths profession are people aged over 60.
They're coming out of retirement.
Coming out of retirement to go and teach maths. People aren't going in there with a maths degree because you can make much more money and have less pressure.
Yeah, doing IT or something.
Working somewhere else.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
Oh, so
happy days.
let me read something lighter to you.
Yeah, I think we got that out of the way. I don't want to be seen as somebody who complains because I love my job.
Yeah, it's a great job.
I love my job.
It's a very rewarding job.
And I'm lucky that, a lot of the concerns are not ones that occupy me too much. I'm at that point in my career where I don't have to think about that as much. But I think that idea about our colleagues, particularly in the state system, burning out,
it's not good.
It's not good, is it?
No, it's not good for the kids. It's not good for the families. It's not really not good for anyone.
No.
But you mentioned just now supply teachers.
Yes.
And that reminded me of a poem. And I know that you also found a poem about a supply teacher.
We could have a poetry slam
Let's
about
have a poetry
supply
slam.
teachers.
Do you want to start first? Yours
Shall
is
I
a bit
do mine
longer.
first?
Do yours.
Mine is called Mrs. Stein. You'll see why in a second. So Mrs. Stein by Bill Dodds. Okay. The school bell rings. We go inside. Our teacher isn't there. Maybe she's sick, her pet cries out. Yeah, right, as if I'd care. I have a D in language arts, my grade in maths the same, and now my teacher might be sick. Could be I'm part to blame. She doesn't like me, that's a fact. I wouldn't tell a lie. She says stuff like, you're very smart, but you don't even try. I start to laugh, my teacher's sick, and boy, I'm feeling fine, when someone knocks the door right in, and there stands Frankenstein. She's 6'8", her dress is black, she's wearing combat boots. I start to gasp, she growls and says, I'll be your substitute. The teacher's pet is whimpering, she doesn't stand a chance. The smart kid stares and points and faints. The bully wets his pants. My name is Mrs. Stein, she says, and every student cringes. She leans the door against the wall. She's knocked it off its hinges. Now let's begin. You there, stand up. She looks me in the eye. I try to move. My legs won't work. I know I'm going to die. In one big step, she's next to me, and she does more than hover. She blocks the sun. It's dark as night. My classmates run for cover. Now get up to the board, she says. I'd like to see some action. Pick up the chalk, explain to us. Division of a fraction. I leap away to save my life. This time I really try. I think and think and think and croak, invert and multiply. Correct, she says. I breathe again and head back for my chair. You freeze, she shouts. And I stop cold and don't go anywhere. This all begins at 9 o'clock. I fight to stay alive. It seems to last a million years. The clock says 9:05. That's just 300 seconds, and then my turn is through. She points at every one of us. Now you, now you, now you. We all get nailed this awful day. There's nowhere we can hide. The lunch bell rings. We cannot eat. We simply crawl outside. We can't believe the other kids who run and play their games. Not us, who have big Mrs. Stein. Our world is not the same. The bell has told I must go in. My time on earth is through. I'll leave this on the playground. Here's what you have to do. You must listen to your teacher and pray her health is fine. Or one day soon you'll hear the words, my name is Mrs. Stein.
This is brilliant. It's absolutely brilliant.
Yes. Good fun. Yes.
So mine isn't that funny, as funny as yours or as long, but it's really cute. I really liked it. Because this happens to me all the time. And I'm not a supply teacher, but when I cover for somebody else, they'll play these games with me and you never know, are they right or are they wrong? So it's called The Supply Teacher by Allan Ahlberg. Here's the rule for what to do if your teacher has the flu or for some other reason takes to her bed and a different teacher comes instead. When the visiting teacher hangs up her hat, writes the date on the board, does this or that, always remember, you have to say this. Our teacher never does that, miss.
Yes.
When you want to change places or wander about or feel like getting the guinea pig out, never forget the message is this. Our teacher always lets us, miss. Mm-hmm. Then when your teacher returns next day and complains about the paint or clay, remember these words. You just say this. The other teacher told us so, miss.
Yes. I've heard that so many times.
That's happened to me quite a lot.
And not just with little kids who take the gerbil out of guinea pig, but also with grade 12s. It's all right if we listen to music.
They always let me.
But Miss Sharo always lets us listen to music.
Which is not true.
Which is not true. Yeah. But, I think to be a good teacher, you've got to have absolute confidence in yourself. Because some of these kids are quite it's quite daunting to be in a room with teenage kids or whatever, and they're playing those sort of games with you. To be able to just say no, not when I'm here.
No, exactly.
My rules. This is my rule. You have to have that, and you have to have that strength.
And yeah, I think sometimes you have to just like remember that you can say, yeah, that was the other teacher. That's fine. Today I'm here. Now my rules. Yeah. So I looked up what makes a good teacher. And there was a website actually that I looked at a few things there. It's really nice. It's called Bored Teachers.
Okay.
And they say, in light of these issues, it is notable that the surveyed education, so they like surveyed people, did a lot of talking with stakeholders and policymakers and everything. And they said, it is notable that the surveyed education stakeholders value teacher dispositions of care, relationships, patient, caring personality, and character, professionalism, dedication, along with teaching specific knowledge and skills. The importance of these dispositions may reflect an underlying belief that without them, a teacher's subject matter, knowledge, and pedagogical skills will do little to help students learn and succeed. In fact, Richard, 2002, views dispositions as the gap between abilities and actions. Having these professional dispositions of care and character, for example, enables teachers to use effective professional judgment and do the right thing for students. Research tells us effective professional judgment and do the right thing for students. Research tells us that when teachers create a safe and supportive learning environment, students are more motivated and consistently engaged. Cognitive scientists tell us that these conditions reduce the cognitive load of learning by allowing individuals to shift their focus from worry and potential risk to the learning task at hand, creating a climate where students feel cared for, that they belong, and where they are free to take risks and make mistakes as they learn new material. Dispositions are the gap between abilities and actions. In a study in India, Singh and Sarkar, 2012, concluded that what the teacher does and believes rather than what the teacher knows is what ultimately counts for their students.
Yeah, I think that's true.
I think that I really think so too, because like you said at the beginning, you said that they will not remember what you taught them.
No.
But they will remember what you modeled, you know, and how you made them feel about themselves.
It's a bit back to that, those who can do, those who can't teach. It's actually a misquote.
Yeah.
The original quote came from Aristotle. Those who can do, those who understand, teach.
Oh my goodness. And who went and changed that? George
Bernard Shaw.
Oh, I hated that man.
In the play Man and Superman. Because he was basically lampooning that sort of, you think about that sort of Dickensian image of the teacher always being the loser child who didn't make it into it, didn't take over the household, didn't become a priest, didn't become a lawyer,
had to become a teacher.
Kind of the end of the chain. And George Bernard Shaw gave teachers a hard time there. But if you think about Aristotle, those who can do, those who understand, teach. And I think that's true.
That's awesome.
So I think you said, you can be a really good mathematician.
But if you can't reach the students, it's wasted.
If you don't understand what is required in order to transfer that knowledge, to understand the dynamics of the classroom, to understand how best to communicate it, then you can't teach it.
Yes, exactly.
And I've known that, where I remember as a head of department, this PhD student, math student, came wanting a job. And we took them as a supply teacher, actually, for 3 months to cover a maternity. And he was a 10 times better mathematician than I was. But he just couldn't communicate and couldn't create a chemistry with the students. I mean, for me, the most important thing is the relationship I have with my students. Where they feel safe and secure. They feel confident that I know what I'm talking about. Because they pick up on your, if it's clear that you don't know what you're doing.
Exactly. I was going to say that. Exactly. It's like when they say skill and knowledge don't matter, that's actually not true.
No. You've got to have enough and to make them feel confident.
To establish trust. Yeah.
So that's another reason why you've got to be really well prepared. So if I'm doing exam questions with a class, I'll make sure I've done them all.
Yeah.
because I can't let them see that I can't do stuff.
Yeah.
It's important.
Yes, absolutely.
Although I also think it is quite good sometimes
to say,
for
I
them
don't
to say,
know.
I don't know,
Yes.
or I need to think about it.
Yeah, but I think this has to be the exception rather than the rule.
Yeah.
If every time they ask you something you say, I don't know, then they lose trust in you. And if every time you pretend that you know everything, they also lose trust in you.
Yes.
So you have to show vulnerability sometimes and say, look, I'll look that up and let you know.
Yeah.
They'll respect you for that. But if it's the standard answer, then they will stop respecting or listening to anything you say.
You've got to feel safe and secure that you in your knowledge, but I think more importantly, they've got to feel safe and secure in the environment that they're in.
Absolutely.
And that on the journey that they're going. So they know that over the next 2 years, they can trust you that you're going to take them where they're going to, they need to go.
Yeah.
I also think it's really important that I always view teaching as part of the entertainment industry.
Oh my goodness, yes. You're a showman in your class. You have to be.
But don't you think, if you put it in the from the context of the student, if you've ever done a shadowing of a student, have you ever done that?
No.
So in my time as a principal, one of the things I used to do was I used to just ask a student if I could
Follow
them all day. And, you know, when you see all of these... I'm not saying our school does it, but if you think back in the UK, there was this move that all lessons had to follow a 3-part structure. All lessons had to have the objectives on the board. It was kind of trying to make all teaching uniform.
Formulaic,
in order to, I guess, improve standards.
Yeah.
But what it did was just made it more and more boring for the kids.
Yeah.
A kid
There's
has
no variety.
to attend however many 6 or 7 hours worth of this stuff every day.
Yeah.
And for me, I think it's fantastic, and I think our school's really great, that every teacher
has a different style.
They come across has their own unique character. The classroom has a different atmosphere, and I think it's really good because I think students then learn about human nature.
Yeah, it prepares them for the job market.
Yeah. So, you know, I think it's...
But back about like the teacher being an entertainer, it is so true. If you walk in there and your voice is the same and you don't know how to read the room and how to keep them engaged and how to make them laugh sometimes, and you lose them.
Definitely. And if you don't put on a performance, then no surprise that kids aren't engaged. It's exactly the same as walking on stage. You have to,
absolutely,
and that's why a lot of teachers are depressives.
Like we said in our last episode.
But I think that's kind of a little bit true too. I think that, unlike a standard office job, where you go and you
can be yourself,
you do your stuff,
you
just do your accounts all day or whatever you're doing. Every time you step into a classroom, you are basically going on stage.
You are. And you have to forget whatever you're going through and go in with this smile. There was a video that went viral actually about a teacher who stood in front of the class, like before he came in outside the class, and he took a deep breath, put a smile on and walked in, because you have to put that persona on. Otherwise first of all, you don't want the kids to worry about you. That's not their job. And the second thing is you really can't reach them if your lesson is riddled with your issues.
It's like I said before, if you don't put the effort in, then why should they put the effort in?
Exactly.
If you dish up a really, really poor meal, don't expect them to enjoy the taste. So I think it is our responsibility to deliver something decent for our students. I've got a question for you, because as well as being a teacher, you're also a mother, and your children are in the same school. I wondered how that was for you, and based on maybe what they tell you, what's it like for your children? Because when I went into teaching, the only thing I promised my children, because they weren't very happy about,
Oh, you went into the same school where they were?
No.
Oh.
No, I promised them I would never do that.
I see, okay.
For their protection, I was really worried about, if I was a teacher, that they would get bullied. The kids
hated. Okay.
They would get bullied, or they would be not treated normally because of that. Is that your experience here? Or?
I mean, it's harder for me than it is for them, I think, because I have to, so I can listen to things being said about other students and just, take it with a level of professionalism, It's like, this thing, the student did this, the student did that, I can understand that. But when it's being said about my sons right in front of me, and I have this maternal instinct, like to feel bad or to defend them or to do, so that's really hard for me. At the same time, it's really hard for me not to say to them, look, you're putting me in a really bad light here. These are my colleagues, please don't do that. So I might have said that 1 or 2 times, and it's not good. It's hard for one of them more than the other because their personalities are so different.
Right.
So one of them begs me to teach him. When are you going to be my teacher? When? Please, just one time. And the other one is like, if I'm there covering, he cringes. It's like, please don't do this. Why did you even come here? And it's so interesting. Yeah. But I think the only good thing is that I'm not a hated teacher around the school, so they don't feel ashamed by me. That's the only thing. That's the good thing.
Yeah, I think if you are the unfortunate child of a teacher who's universally loathed by the students, or has a reputation like that, then that must be so hard.
That must be very tough. I mean, I don't envy those kids. No. But the funny thing is, the funny thing is, they will listen to every teacher, and that's both of them. Every teacher at the school except for me. So I think this is the same thing I've heard other teachers say as well, that the children will not listen to their judgment. What do you know? You're like, I'm a teacher at the same school where you go. Still, you don't know. We don't know what the teacher told us. So your judgment isn't valid. And you're like, but my students really value my judgment. That's your students. Yeah. This is different. Yeah, okay.
That's weird, isn't it?
Yeah.
That's weird.
Sorry, you wanted to say...
I just wondered whether you'd have the experience in the classroom of somebody calling you mom.
It happened to me only one time. But mom! And I'm like...
I think it's one of those golden moments that when it happens, it's like, yes, it happened to me.
It is so cute.
It's so funny.
And this person was not even young. I mean, I think they were 14, 15. Mom! And I'm like, okay.
How did you react when they said
laughed.
that?
I laughed so hard, and they did too. And we just, it was just very funny.
There's somebody put their hand up and said, Dad. And they're like... So actually, I went over and I put my hands on their shoulders and said, I told you not to tell anybody. So everybody in the class said, what?
Really?
Yeah, so it was funny. Yes. Well, we're coming down the home straight here. We really should,
there was really so much that we wanted to...
Can I read something by Frank McCourt?
Yes.
Do you know Frank McCourt?
Yes, I love Frank
McCourt. Who wrote Angelou's Ashes. I didn't realise he was a teacher.
Yes, he was.
Yeah,
Teacher Man. I think his first book was called Teacher Man, if I'm not mistaken.
Okay. So I loved his description of what being a teacher was to him. He said... in the high school classroom, which we are part of, right? In the high school classroom, you are a drill sergeant, a rabbi, a shoulder to cry on, a disciplinarian, a singer, a low-level scholar, a clerk, a referee, a clown, a counsellor, a dress code enforcer, a conductor, an apologist, a philosopher, a collaborator, a tap dancer, a politician, a therapist, a fool, a traffic cop, a priest, a mother, father, brother, sister, uncle, aunt, a bookkeeper, a critic, a psychologist, and the last straw.
The last straw. I love that. I love this.
It's great reading,
so true.
Isn't it?
I think I've done all of these things except for tap dancing.
I'm not sure about the rabbi thing. I'm not sure how...
a counsellor kind of, right? Somebody who listens and...
But it's so true, isn't it? And I think it is definitely... It's both the joy and the challenge of our profession is that you never know what role you're going to have to take.
Yeah. With any particular student.
Just before this meeting, just before our podcast, you're a little bit late because you're having to deal with stuff.
Yeah.
This is the Stoic thing.
Yeah.
You can't control everything all the time. You just got to take it as it comes. So maybe that book, The Stoic Teacher,
we should read it,
is something we should all read, maybe.
Yeah. So I think, have you got anything to finish with, or can I read you one lesson?
No, please read me something. I had my go with Frank McCourt.
So I went and looked at some things that people said about their teachers, and I found one funny one, and one that I would like to finish with because it's so beautiful. Do you know Jimmy Fallon? He's a TV presenter.
I know him, yeah.
He said,
that's funny.
One day he said the teacher came in, and we were all looking at him. The teacher came in, and he looked at us, and he was quiet for a minute, and then he was like, "Never get married." And they were like, "Okay, sir." So you can only imagine.
I think I might have said that to some of my students.
Yeah, so that was funny. But then I found something else about Maya Angelou.
Yeah, I love Maya Angelou too, yeah.
Yeah, and so this was from an article that I will put in the show notes, and it says, she mentioned her teacher. She said, "She was one of the few gentlewomen I have ever known, and has remained throughout my life the measure of what a human being can be." So Dr. Maya Angelou is, and it says from this article, is one of history's greatest artists, and her work is studied throughout the world. But Angelou, who taught humanities at Wake Forest University, described herself as a teacher first, saying, "I'm not a writer who teaches, I'm a teacher who writes." And I love that. Her neighbour and teacher, Bertha Flowers, cultivated her love of poetry by taking her to the library and visiting her home to read to her. Wow. Flowers earned further respect for empowering Angelou to regain her voice after not speaking for 5 years. Wow. Angelou paid tribute to Flowers in her autobiography, I Know Why the Caged Bird Sings. She says about her, "She had the grace of control to appear warm in the coldest weather. And on the Arkansas summer days, it seemed she had a private breeze which swirled around, cooling her. When she chose to smile on me, I always wanted to thank her. The action was so graceful and inclusively benign."
Ah, lovely. And I think what I should take from that is that, like I say, if you're an accountant and you're lying on your deathbed, people are not going to be saying to you, "It's a fantastic balance sheet you did back in 1987.
Not to
really,
bash any accountants.
No, I'd love to be an accountant. I love it. But that's not really, the value's not really for that, is it?
Yes, exactly.
But I think one thing we do know as teachers, I hope
that we leave some legacy.
There's some legacy where children, hopefully most of them, have positive memories of the time they spent in my classroom or on the sports field or just in the corridor having a joke with me. And the idea that maybe there are 2,000 to 3,000 children who I've had some impact on their development and growth is better than any financial or
any other reward
or business legacy that I might set down. So it's nice, isn't it?
No, I agree with you. When I get an email from a student who graduated 2-3 years ago, or something on Instagram saying, "This made me think of you," or "I remembered this in our class," it always brings tears to my eyes. It's the best thing that you can get from a job.
Yeah, absolutely.
So I'm very grateful.
We should be grateful.
Yes.
And of course we have great colleagues.
Yes.
And we're lucky to work in a lovely school with lovely students.
Absolutely.
And lovely parents.
Yes.
And because the kind of thing, it's not that for those absolute soldiers or warriors who are working in some of the difficult state schools, back in back in the UK, they have their absolute utmost respect. They do an amazing job.
They really handle the worst kind of, not the worst, but the most difficult cases where the parents are either not involved or very difficult, and the students are very unhappy and or traumatized.
Very large class sizes.
Yeah, exactly.
And everything stacked against you. And, so that's where I cut my teeth, but I'm so glad to be here.
We are really lucky. And so, this was lovely. I hope we didn't bore anyone with our stories from the classroom or our poems.
Yes, and if anything that goes against the policies of the school, we might say that any views expressed during this podcast were purely ours and not those of any official institution that we might work for.
Exactly, they don't represent the school. Exactly.
Absolutely. Good.
So, this was lovely. Thank you.
So let's do this again, and we'll see everybody next week.
We'll see you next week.
Okay.
Bye.
Bye. We hope that you've enjoyed listening to the readings we chose for you today.
And that our musings have ignited your thoughts.
If you've enjoyed this episode, please share it with your friends and those you think would enjoy it.
If you have any thoughts, suggestions, or any kind of feedback, please send us an email using the email in the show notes.
We'd love to hear from you with the words that make you.